The politicians and the psychologists are running what they think is a clever game. They're trying to confuse us by changing the laws and giving very little warning. I hope, for example, that viewers took note of my advice not to take a holiday abroad this summer. Those who flew off to Spain and suddenly found themselves having to go into quarantine will wish they'd gone to Bridlington instead. We have to remember in the UK that there isn't anyone in the Conservative government who could remove the child-proof top from a bottle of aspirin tablets. They aren't the brightest of God's creatures, and most of them have IQs smaller than their hat size. The armies of scientists, mathematical modelers, psychologists and lunatics led out of the asylum for the duration are screwing up our world with the sort of determination you might expect a bunch of hooray Henrys trying to put toothpaste on their own toothbrushes would manage, or heaven forbid trying to tie their own shoelaces. Prince Charles, enthusiastic climate change nutter and aficionado of the global reset, will know what I mean about the toothpaste on the toothbrush. He's said to have always had a valet to do that sort of thing for him. All the stuff would doubtless be on his shoes and the ceiling. And he'd probably strangle himself if he had to tie his own shoelaces. Proving that there's plenty of mileage in the old adage much favoured by my Aunt Agatha, who once worked as a lady in waiting in one of the European monarchies. There's no tosser like a royal tosser. The chaos our would-be leaders are deliberately creating is being helped by the fact that up in Scotland, the Sturgeon woman seems to be doing everything she can to ensure that everyone realises that Scotland is not the same as England. The bloke who claims to run Wales, and whose name I cannot for the life of me remember and can't be bothered to look up because, to be honest, who gives a damn, seems to be doing much the same sort of thing. So I discovered the other day that whereas blood donors in England must wear masks at all times, or they won't be allowed to give blood, the people in Wales who are generous enough to offer up half an armful of best blood must remove their masks for safety reasons, so that if they go pale and start to faint, this can be spotted. And I have to say the Welsh theory makes far more sense than the one being favoured in England. I've no idea what the law is in Scotland at the moment. I wouldn't mind betting, however, that it's something different to the laws in England and Wales, and probably something a little barking. Maybe in Scotland blood donors have to wear a tam o' shanter over their faces, or wear a skilt in the sturgeon tartan and pull it over their faces as they're being phlebotomised. You'd have a job to find a better example of the lunatic way this whole psy-op is being managed. No one can possibly take such madness seriously. I know we have to take them seriously because they're all trying to take over the world, but honestly, it's difficult not to laugh at them. Everywhere I look, I find evidence that governments are talking absolute gibberish and treating their citizens the way you might expect them to treat a full-blooded enemy. Look at what has happened in Qatar, for example. Qatar is one of the richest nations on earth, but when they introduced a contact tracing app, many low-earning workers had to borrow money in order to buy the sort of new, up-to-the-minute phones needed to download the app. And why did all those people bother buying the phones and downloading the app? Simple. Not having the official app installed on your phone could lead to a fine of up to $55,000 or 3 years in prison. The app, developed by a private firm, requires access to the files on the phone and permanent use of the GPS and Bluetooth. And the police have apparently been stopping motorists to check that they had their phones with them and that the apps were up and running. And that created a problem for some citizens who didn't have the phone required to run the app. They didn't dare leave their homes to buy one in case they were stopped on their way to the phone shop. 3 years in prison for not having an app on your phone. Back in the UK, mask wearing has become the law, and there are still politicians and scientists telling us that we should wear masks to save the community. Be a local hero by wearing a mask. But there's absolutely no decent science to prove that masks are of any help. Indeed, on the contrary, the evidence shows that they probably do more harm than good. I've already detailed the evidence about masks in several videos, but here's another piece of scientific evidence. At the beginning of what was a hoax and has now morphed into the coronavirus crime, it was decided that there was no evidence that wearing a mask would help healthy individuals avoid infections with viruses such as COVID-19. On the 6th of April, the World Health Organization said that there was no evidence that masks would help. Numerous medical experts repeated that. There's been no evidence since then that could have persuaded the World Health Organization to change its collective mind. I think the change was just political. Indeed, I've been reminded of yet another paper published in the British medical journal Open in 2015, which I quoted some time ago, and which seems to suggest that cloth masks are, shall we be polite and say, offer limited protection against respiratory infection. The study, led by the University of New South Wales but covering medical workers in Vietnam, studied 1,607 workers, some wearing heavy-duty medical masks, some wearing ordinary cloth masks, and some just wearing usual hospital protection. The study showed that the subjects wearing cloth masks had higher rates of infection than anyone, including the control group. The researchers also measured the masks to see how many particles got through. They found that cloth masks allowed 97% of particles through. And as I've shown in other videos on mask wearing, the evidence shows that wearing a mask can lead to illness and possibly worse. As I showed in my video about the BBC's fact checkers, masks can cause real health problems. Hypoxia, low blood oxygen levels, is a very serious problem which should not be dismissed. You'd have to be an idiot not to feel that masks do more harm than good. The only possible conclusion, of course, is that we're being pushed into wearing masks for political reasons. Masks are part of the oppression. Why then aren't all doctors screaming out about the pointlessness and danger of forcing people to wear masks for many hours a day? Why are so many doctors so silent? Fear and cowardice, I'm afraid. Doctors have been ordered to keep quiet about anything relating to coronavirus, which is critical of the government's line. This is pretty well a global clampdown. If doctors had found the courage to ignore the orders they were given and to speak out in order to protect their patients and save lives, then this whole criminal enterprise would have been over weeks ago. But doctors have feebly followed the philosophy, keep your head down, don't rock the boat, or to stick in another piece of nauseating nautical self-protection, don't make any waves. It surprises me and saddens me enormously that members of the medical and nursing professions have accepted this takeover of our lives. Even if they don't think there's anything sinister behind what's happening, they must by now realise that the whole response to the coronavirus has been wrong. Hospitals have been closed. Patients with cancer and other serious disorders have been denied essential treatment. Thousands of patients in care homes have been murdered as a result of inept policies and management. Schools have been closed and the lives of millions of children have been ruined. They know that's no exaggeration. The government has been employing brainwashing techniques to control us and to create a fake affection for the health service. Doctors and nurses know all this is true. They know that the clever three-word, three-phrase slogans, the encouragement to take part in weekly clapping sessions, and the advertisements were all designed to build up the fear and to create a sense of national obedience. Medical doctors and nurses know that the spin doctors have been doing everything they can to exaggerate the number of deaths. As I've said before, patients with the coronavirus were listed as having died of it. If the truth about what's happened ever emerges, then the medical and nursing professions are going to be embarrassed and humiliated, to put it kindly. And some people in both professions are going to go to jail, I think. It's time to insist that hospitals and clinics are opened immediately without any of the social distancing, which every thinking person knows was never necessary. The media has found many curious heroes in the last 3 months, mostly as part of the propaganda process, I'm afraid. Now is the time for the professions to earn their plaudits. The nation needs to have its health service back. It would be a big step forward on the road back to real normality, and it would destroy the not-so-hidden agenda of the United Nations, Bill Gates and company. It hurts me to have to say this, but I've nothing but contempt for the doctors and nurses who've kept silent through all this. Their cowardice in refusing to stand up to the politicians and the bureaucrats has already led to millions of deaths worldwide, and things are getting worse by the day. I'm just doing my job, say the silent ones. I have my family to think of. Where have we heard that before? And no doctor today is going to be executed for speaking out. It isn't just doctors who've betrayed us at all. Of course, the majority of the professions have done so. Teachers betrayed their pupils and their responsibilities to them by insisting on absurd and inhuman social distancing rules. And I gather that some are now demanding that pupils wear masks when schools finally reopen in the autumn. There's absolutely no scientific reason for pupils to be required to wear masks or to obey daft social distancing rules. If teachers would make the effort to look at the science, they would realise this. The clergy have betrayed us too. By closing churches and agreeing not to hold services, they've betrayed their parishioners and their gods. Now, their leaders are negotiating for a universal global religion which will make as much sense as combining all sports into one. Can you imagine the fuss if it was suggested that football, cricket, golf, tennis, hockey and so on should all be combined into a single sport? Well, that's the madness being promoted by Tony Blair and senior churchmen. The people who've come out of this with my great respect are the postmen and women, the delivery drivers, the rubbish collectors, the shop assistants and the transport workers, all of whom have done their jobs throughout. Henry David Thoreau has long been one of my favourite authors. He's best known, of course, for Walden, but I've been rereading his short book on civil disobedience, which, not surprisingly, contains much advice which seems well suited to our peculiar current circumstances. Here's one quote: "It is not desirable to cultivate a respect for the law so much as for the right. The only obligation which I have the right to assume is to do at any time what I think is right." And then there's this: "Law never made men a whit more just, and by means of their respect for it, even the well-disposed are daily made the agents of injustice." And finally, for now, all men recognize the right of revolution, that is, the right to refuse allegiance to and to resist the government when its tyranny or its inefficiency are great and unendurable. But almost all say that such is not the case now. But of course it is the case now. We have to stand up to our tyrannical governments. And if doctors and nurses stood up together and told the truth, that's all they have to do, tell the truth, then the people would see the extent of the lies, governments would fall and the coup would be over. If that doesn't happen soon, it'll be too damn late. It would help enormously if you'd press the thumbs up button and if possible leave a small comment. We haven't monetized this channel and there are no advertisements and no sponsors, nor will there ever be. Clicking the thumbs up button simply helps to keep the video and the channel visible so that as many as possible can find them. Thank you for watching An Old Man in a Chair, and thanks for all your support and encouragement. It means a lot. Please copy and share the videos on Facebook, Twitter, BitChute and other platforms. Let's spread the truth. If you'd like to put on a translation, that would be great. If my videos disappear, please go to vernoncoleman.com, where you can find transcripts, including transcripts of the banned videos. There are also many other articles there. The website has no ads and no sponsors. If you'd like to see more videos from me, please subscribe to my channel, because the videos aren't always easy to find. If you visit mainstream media, please put on messages asking readers to watch the videos to find the truth. Although it may feel like it at times, please remember that you're not on your own. More and more people are waking up, and I firmly believe that we will win this battle together. Distrust the government, avoid mass media and fight the lies. Thank you for watching An Old Man in a Chair.